The Toronto Raptors return from the All-Star break with a dramatic victory, taking care of business in the Windy City. Let's talk about it.
This is the Raptors Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Toronto Raptors. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of the Raptors Postcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network covering your team every day. And we're coming to you live after the Toronto Raptors 110-101 win against the Chicago Bulls on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Locked On Podcast feed. I'm Zulfi, Sheikh, credentialed journalist covering the Raptors and the NBA for over 2 years now with outlets like Sportsnet and Raptors Republic. And now I'm one of your humble hosts of the Raptors Postcast, breaking out each and every game with you. And with me is Duane Notice, a.k.a. Dino, professional basketball player and analyst. Duane has represented Canada. He's been part of the Raptors system with the Raptors 905, and he's still hooping professionally in leagues like the CEBL. And on tonight's show, we're going to talk about how the Raptors were able to hold on for their first win after the All-Star break. We're going to break down Darko's decision to start CMB over Jakob Poeltl. We'll get some thoughts from our resident pro in a segment we like to call Take Notice. And then we're going to wrap things up by handing out our player of the game. And Duane, this is going to sound very familiar to something I've said before, but it wasn't pretty, but the Raptors still found a way to win. They took care of business. The Raptors, I believe, are now 22-7 against teams below 500. You could tell maybe they weren't ready to get up again for this game against the Chicago Bulls. They were kind of on cruise control towards the end of that game and almost let it slip away. But ultimately, the Raptors did not blow a 14-point lead. They held on despite losing the lead a bit there in the end there. They improved to 33-23. Brandon Ingram pops off for 31 points. It was his second 30-piece against the Bulls this season after giving them 33 last time. And then the youngsters like CMB and Jakob Poeltl also made some very big plays down the stretch. Initial impressions following the Raptors' victory.
I thought it was a really good win, man. Like you always mentioned, it doesn't have to be a Picasso, but as long as you get it done, you got to find a way. And they did a great job of doing that, especially coming from the All-Star break. You already know guys were either on vacation or guys were kind of, taking a chill break. But coming back from that, I think they did a great job of just rallying together. It was kind of tough. Like you mentioned, you're supposed to beat these kind of teams. I think that's the toughest part about being a competitor in this sport is sometimes you're playing teams that are beneath your level talent-wise, and then it's hard for you to kind of match that or play to your strengths because you kind of lower yourself to the competition. Like you said, kind of get on cruise control, and you take things for granted, take things a little bit easier because the competition isn't as effective. But I think the Raptors still found a way to win, and they played fast, which is always good. They forced a lot of turnovers, so their defense was doing a great thing, especially when they had the switching partners with the lineup that they had out there. And at the end of the game, I saw a lineup that was crazy to me. I mean, they had quickly at the 1, but 2 to 5. Literally, it was RJ, it was Scotty, it was CMB, and it was BI. And that's like one of those bigger lineups that you could switch everything. And it's kind of hard to get in the paint and into the interior on that type of defense when you have that kind of length there on the perimeter. So, again, the Raptors did have some positives to take away from. But, again, we know that they could have played better. But getting the win is always the best thing. So, shout out to them for doing that.
Yeah, look, when it comes to this last third of the season, the thing I personally think the Raptors need to stick to, and a lot of teams in their position that are fighting for a playoff spot where there's no guarantees, so you need to just find ways to stack victories and take care of business. And I think as a player, you can probably relate to that quite a bit. And now after this game, the Raptors are 13-4 against bottom 10 teams in the NBA. That's exactly what a team that's trying to be competitive for the first time in a while needs to do. They need to show they're not going to play down to their competition all the time. Now, you can make an argument that the Raptors maybe did a little bit in this game, but Scotty Barnes coming into this game said something pregame. He said, we don't play to our opponents, we play to our principles. And that's something it's what allowed them to lead early in this game, quite honestly. You mentioned the turnovers. They forced 20 turnovers for this game. 11 of those turnovers from the Bulls came in the first quarter. That's the most the Raptors have forced in any quarter this season. They score 14 points off that. They're able to take a bit of an early lead. That's how the Raptors like to play. They get stops, they turn you over, they're physical, and then they go running the other way, and they're able to beat you in transition. The Raptors, very much in this game early on, were the more physical team. They were bumping guys off their spots. I saw multiple Chicago Bulls players hitting the deck more times than once because the Raptors were just being, like, they were out muscling them. And I think that's how you establish those principles that Scotty Barnes was talking about. And then they were able to balloon that a little bit in the second quarter because a guy like Scotty and BI are able to take over. The Bulls' saving grace in this game, truthfully, was just the fact that they could hit more threes than the Raptors. And that's been the Raptors' Achilles heel this whole season. The Bulls finish 12 of 40 from three. The Raptors hit 7 of 23. So that's about 15 points there that the Raptors need to make up for, and that's why the Bulls were able to stay in it. But in the second quarter, when the Bulls started hitting some of those threes, what happened? Your leaders led the way. Scotty Barnes scores 8 points in a row, 12-0 run. The Raptors are able to get ahead. Flash forward to the third quarter. This time it's Brandon Ingram's turn, just like the last time he faced the Bulls. He scores 11 points in the third quarter. The Raptors are able to maintain that lead and stay ahead. And then if you want to fast forward to the end of this game, when the Bulls are really making a run, they've cut it to a 4-point game, and the Raptors need a bucket at the end to ice it there. Brandon Ingram basically sees Jalen Smith and says, let me have this dance. Takes him ISO one-on-one, step back, hits the midi, ball game over. So your leaders led the way. You stuck to your principles. This was very much a take care of business. Let's get back home and stay to our identity type of win as far as I saw it.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I don't know if Gorilla needs to be at all the road games, but she needs to come on the road with the Raptors and sit courtside because B.I. had himself a phenomenal game, especially just proving himself as an all-star during All-Star Weekend and then coming off the heels of that. I think he was very intentional today. And when the Raptors needed him, he showed up. And he was very efficient. Just the way he gets to his spots with minimal dribbles is so incredible to me. It's such a thing to witness. I love seeing it. It's like art there in real time in motion out there on the court. But then him just being selfless as well. So filling out the other stat sheets or other buckets of the stat sheet, I think is important for BI because he's not just becoming a scorer that we're usually accustomed to him being. We see him affect the defensive end. We see him get a couple of assists, and we see him just understand how the rhythm of the game is going and not forcing things, but again, showing up when he's needed. And then Scotty has just been Mr. Consistent all season. And again, he had a great showing in the All-Star game as well, hitting that buzzer-beating shot to allow his team to advance. But yes, talk about his run today against Chicago. I mean, his ability to get the ball out in transition and be a recipient or be the igniter, I think is one of the reasons why the Raptors are so successful. Now, you talked about being physical on defense. I think the Raptors did a great job of doing that. But it's not always the physical team that wins. I think sometimes it's the smarter team that wins. So the fact that the Raptors have high IQ players out there making smart decisions, but then also who are not afraid of contact and being the ones to establish, we spoke about basketball being like a fight, them kind of throwing the first punch and being the ones that weren't bullied today, I think made an impact on why they're winning.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Duane. And one of the players that is very impactful and is a very good decision maker, you may not expect, it's Collin Murray-Boyles as a rookie. And so I want to make sure we talk about him and Darko's decision to start him with our talking point of the game.
This is what you'll be talking about.
So, as we all know, Collin Murray-Boyles leading into the All-Star break, dealing with a bit of a thumb injury. He missed a game, but he plays in the Rising Star game for a little bit. Didn't really take too much part of it, but obviously that thumb was clearly bothering him still. He comes back in this game, and not just the fact that he's playing, but he starts, which is interesting because Jakob Poeltl was available in this game. He ended up playing. I think Jakob finishes with he finished with 16 minutes, and this was Jakob Poeltl's first time coming off the bench in over a year. I think since the Raptors had traded back for Jakob Poeltl, this is maybe the fourth time he's come off the bench. So it's definitely not a common thing for him. But watching this game, and especially watching how this game ended and how CMB's versatility defensively and just his mobility, quite frankly, that Jakob is working his way back towards, doesn't necessarily have yet. It seemed like a very, not risky, but interesting decision from Darko, but one that ultimately paid off in this game watching it, right?
Yeah, definitely paid off, but we spoke about it before. CMB's ability to be so versatile on the defensive end, I think, is one of the main reasons to why he's able to remain on the court despite not being, the biggest offensive, threat out there for the Raptors. But CMB being able to be vocal, being able to move his feet. I think other bigs in his position sometimes have their feet stuck in mud, but he's able to be a great switching partner and take on these players who want to try and isolate guys like Jakob Poeltl. So CMB just understands how to play the right way. Coming from a great school, again, I'm going to always shout out my alma mater, South Carolina. So University of South Carolina, they just teach greatness when it comes to basketball on the court. But CMB knows how to play. He's one of those guys that you could plug him in off the bench, or you could plug him in into any part of the offense or defense, and he'll figure it out. He'll find a way. And I just think his hustle, his intensity, and I think his passion for how he plays is something that is super infectious. Again, he's not the guy that's going to make the highlight tape in terms of getting buckets or putting points on the board. But when he's able to do his job at a high level, which is set screens properly without getting foul calls, rolling to the basket when he needs to, and then on defense, just containing his man. We saw that great extra effort in the fourth quarter when he was able to peel off switch and then help on the strong side, which you normally don't teach in basketball because of guys that can shoot the ball at a high level. But he recovered so quickly that he was able to get a block, not just a closeout, a block, and it was able to BI to save it and throw it in, and that was a crucial stop for the Raptors at the end of the game. So again, CMB making the most of his minutes, I think, is something that a lot of young guys and other players who are aspiring to be in his position can learn from. Again, they're not calling plays for him. He's not a guy that complains or pouts. He's a guy that just works hard and he hustles at all levels at all times and doesn't take any plays off. So for me as a fan, but also as a competitor, it's nothing that I can do but just admire it.
Yeah, he finishes with 11 points on 4 of 5 shooting, 6 rebounds, a steal. And again, it was all within the flow of the game. It's exactly what the Raptors needed against a younger, faster Bulls team. Now, the Raptors, for their part, obviously were running and doing a lot in transition, but the Bulls kept up with them. I believe it was ended up being 24-19 in fast break points for the Raptors, and usually they're blowing teams out in that category. And for much of this game, I believe for the first 3 quarters, these two teams were tied in fast break points. So having a guy like CMB out there to play against a much faster, much pacier Bulls team, I think did make a difference. I don't want to say this as a knock on Jakob Poeltl, but for times of this game when he was in there, it felt like everyone was playing around him because he was struggling to keep up. Now, some of that is his conditioning and getting back out there, but he finishes with 2 points. He doesn't even get a rebound in this game for Jakob Poeltl. That's very surprising. Granted, again, 60 minutes, but you can sense a bit of timidness from him in this game. So it ends up opening up an opportunity for CMB. And like you said, he snatches the opportunity. He takes advantage of it. And I thought the best part coming out of it is we already know defensively what he's capable of. It's offensively, he's just starting to get more and more comfortable. One of his first interior passes in this game, he passes out of it and it ends up leading to a 3-point shot that's ultimately missed. And you're thinking maybe he could have gone up for that. You fast forward to the third quarter, he's running in transition, sealing his man. Brandon Ingram is dumping it into him, and he's scoring a basket. And that bears fruit for them immediately because in the fourth quarter, before Brandon Ingram seals the basket, it's Collin Murray-Boyles who ends up getting a post-up on the mismatch when the Bulls try to double and rotate around, when he ends up putting the ball up at the basket and gets an and one, and the Raptors get their much-needed breathing room where they were kind of reeling at that point. I believe the Bulls were on a 7-0 run. So for him to immediately be like that sponge that takes up all this information in real time and works off of it, I think that's exactly what the Raptors need, especially when it's very clear that Jakob Poeltl it's not going to be like 0 to 100 for him. He's going to have to very slowly work his way back, not just into the rotation, but into a comfortable spot for himself.
Yeah, it's going to take some time. Obviously, he's a bigger guy. So for him, just adapting to the style of basketball, how fast the Raptors play, he's been out for a while. So again, you talk about conditioning, you talk about just a feel for the game, and especially having that type of injury, it affects you mentally to a point where you can see it affecting his game physically. So for him, you just want to take it day by day. Hopefully every practice, every treatment, every film session, and then every game, he's able to improve and get closer to the player that we know he's accustomed to being. But man, CMB, I just think it's incredible, like you said, his ability to take on so much information. He's learning from the coaching staff. He's learning from the vets. He's learning from guys like Scotty, and you're seeing it in fruition onto the court. Just his ability to seal, get the and one, play through contact. A couple of games ago, we used to, kind of criticize him for not going up with that and trying to kick it out. But I think that he's a great determining factor of not forcing it, but also understanding how to play within the offense. And I like the fact that he can catch the ball on the block. And if he doesn't have his own ISO, type of bucket, he's able to do the grenade, which we call in basketball, which is the uphill, step up, handoff. And then when he gets that ball on the roll, he makes great decisions, whether he's finishing it at a high level at the rim or he's kicking it out. So for him, I just think it's him as well, taking it day by day and continuing to get better. Obviously, we know he's a little bit undersized, but he makes up for it in effort. And I think that you can't teach that. So we love seeing CMB continue to take advantage of his minutes, and it's always the next man up mentality. So for him, he just has to, learn from guys like Jakob Poeltl, but also learn what he can improve on and what the Raptors need him to do and how he can be successful at it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Raptors lineups look and adjust as they get healthier. I believe this was the first time since November 7th where every player was available for them. So like you said, it's going to be different guys stepping up. It's going to be Darko Rajakovic trying different things. And it's going to be interesting to see how they figure out a rotation down the stretch, especially heading into the playoffs, hopefully. And one of the other guys that did step up for the Raptors tonight, one of the other young guys, was Jakob Poeltl. And coming up, Duane and I are going to discuss Jakob Poeltl's game and whether or not we think he can take a hold of that basketball backup shooting guard spot as we continue this episode of the Raptors Postcast. All right, this episode is brought to you by Quo. New Year's, new system. This is a time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our businesses and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo. That's spelled QUO, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees full convo threads right from your phone or computer, which makes replies faster and more personal. And with Quo Smart AI tools, you can automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise why Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses from solo operators to growing teams. So make this a year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed opportunities. This episode is also brought to you by Indeed. Deadline stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and one position you have that still needs to be filled. It's workplace chaos. So when the pressure's on and you need the right hire, that's a task for Indeed sponsored jobs. The service that helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. So if you need to make a hire, that's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And lastly, this episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy, a liquid shot that gives you a much-needed boost with zero sugar. And 5 Hour Energy has a variety of flavors from classic fan favorites. And if you're a Raptors fan, that's probably somebody like Amir Johnson, Patrick Patterson, or more recently, Sandro Mamukelashvili are the underrated sleepers. 5 Hour Energy has it all. I personally enjoy peach mango. It's a ripe peach flavor right from the first sip, and then the mango comes in and adds that tropical sweetness. It's smooth, aromatic, citrusy, and bold, a blend that gets me feeling right in the morning. And with plenty of 5 Hour Energy shots to try, find a new favorite flavor by visiting 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. And remember, 5 Hour Energy does it with zero sugar. All right, as we continue this episode of the Raptors Postcast, be sure to check out Sean Woodley with Locked On Raptors in the morning to get more in-depth analysis of the Raptors' 110-101 win over the Chicago Bulls. And Duane, I figured it was my turn to step into the take notice, the leader spot here. Hopefully, I'm not stepping on your toes, but I wanted to take a minute to shout out Jakob Poeltl in this game. He finishes with 14 points. He leads his team in scoring off the bench, 4 of 9 from the field, 2 of 5 from downtown, 4 rebounds as well. And I think it's important to talk about Jakob Poeltl because something that was a narrative for the Raptors in the first half of the season was the backup shooting guard spot. It was a bit of a logjam. You have Jakob Poeltl, you have Grady Dick, you can even throw AJ Lawson in the mix, and obviously there was Ochai Agbaji, who's now been sent to the Brooklyn Nets. And in some part, that was a financial move for the Raptors. But also, if you look at the rotation for this team, I think players like Jacoby and Grady can benefit from that a little bit because they're no longer looking over their shoulders as often, worrying about their spot in the rotation, if mistakes are being made. And a night like tonight felt like why you think Jakob Poeltl could maybe be that go-to backup shooting guard for this team. We know what he can do defensively. He's very capable of that. But offensively, he was playing within the system. He hit a couple pivotal baskets for this team on that end as well. There's a really clutch 3 in the fourth quarter from the left corner in transition. So when you see him being able to do these things on both ends, I know consistency is a question. Do you believe, or are you confident that he can kind of take over that spot for this team in this closing half of the season?
Yeah, I definitely do. I am confident because I know his discipline and work ethic is definitely one that calls for it. But you need a guy like this on every team, right? You need someone that could plug in those spots. I think of guys like Jay Crowder back in the day that were great defenders, but also were able to hit shots at a high level. I think guys like PJ Tucker, corner specialist. Jakob Poeltl is shooting 49% from the three-point line in the corners. So he's making it count when he gets those opportunities. And we know what he does on defense. I love his fearlessness. He's so gritty. He picks up players full court, no matter if he turns it over, no matter if he gets a bucket, no matter if he makes an assist. He's right there in your chest, ready to slide his feet and let the people know that he's in front of them. And I think he's the head of the snake on the defensive end when it comes to his ability to just show his hustle and effort. When guys like Scotty are on the bench, he takes on that mantle. So, yeah, I think Jakob Poeltl can definitely plug into that backup two-guard spot. Obviously, Grady Dick is a phenomenal three-point shooter, and we've seen him be active on the defensive end. But it just comes more natural for a guy like Jacoby. And I think that he's going to continue to get reps. And then, like you made a great point. As a player, when you've realized that you have a longer leash and that you don't have to look over your shoulder, I think you're able to be more confident and be more aggressive. And I think that's the next step for him. Outside of being consistent, I think it's to be a little bit more aggressive. Sometimes I find that he's a little hesitant when he gets the ball because he's trying to make the right play. And that does make him special because he plays at a high level with that IQ. But sometimes he needs to take his defender to the basket or take some more shots just to keep the defense a little bit more honest. And that will help guys like Scotty, guys like B.I., especially near the later part of the game when they can close it out, because defenders will be worried about Jakob Poeltl making the shots earlier in the game. So, again, I think he can fill that spot, and I love the way he's been playing. The Raptors have a great next man up mentality, and if he continues to learn from the vets, learn from the coaches, watch film, and continue to put in some time, I think he could be a great spark plug off the bench at that two-guard spot.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if he can, again, like you said, be more aggressive, be more consistent with it. I think coming out of college, one of the things I like most about Jakob Poeltl is his ability to be crafty around the basket in the painted area. I kind of refer, he's not like SGA necessarily, but he has that slithery quality to him where he can really sneak into these tight spots, gets to the line for 4 free throws. That's a quality the Raptors can take advantage of. Obviously, like you said, his shooting outside is going to be important for this team and being able to bend defenses that way. But if he's also able to do some of the in-between stuff, it really elevates his role for this team, especially coming off the bench, where they truthfully need a scoring punch. With Mamu back on the bench, you do have his scoring there, which is very important. But outside of him, it's not really a lot of scorers per se. Again, Grady Dick has struggled a little bit in this game. He goes 0 for 3. Jamal Shed and Jakob Poeltl, I wouldn't necessarily consider them scoring guys, and Jakob Poeltl is probably not going to be coming off the bench. I don't know. We're going to find out. But Jamal Shed is your setup man mostly. So having that like spark plug scorer in the traditional sense, that's usually a guard, I think for Jacoby can be really important. And again, defensively, he's just so impactful at the point of attack. Like you said, when Scotty's not there, he's taking on these top assignments. It was in the fourth quarter, actually, right before Scotty checked back into this game, after Jakob Poeltl hit that clutch 3 where he was able to keep the Raptors up by 7 when the Bulls had cut it down to 4. Jakob Poeltl helped force a shot clock violation on Josh Giddey. That is a massive swing in momentum for the Raptors to then get that stop, and then the Bulls are looking at the sideline and Scotty Barnes is checking back into the game. It's going to be tougher on them mentally as well. So for Jacoby to help, again, stack some of those internal wins within the game, I think is going to be super important and something developmentally that's going to take them a long way. And all these guys, again, in the back half of the season are going to have these moments, whether that's Grady Dick, Jakob Poeltl, Jamal Shed. You're going to have to see how they can stack these moments and build themselves into a rotation that by no means is solidified right now. The Raptors have a lot of quality players, but we know what happens come playoff times. These rotations get tightened. You're looking at maybe 9 guys seeing the floor in a playoff game at most. So it's going to come down to who performs throughout this final third of the season. But a guy who has performed for the Raptors time and time again is Brandon Ingram, and I think it's the right time for us to show him a bit of love with our player of the game.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
All right, we did have a fan in the chat asking if we had handed out our player of the game yet. We have not, but I'm going to start by pitching, obviously, Brandon Ingram's case. I think I teased that already. Finishes with 31 points, 11 of 26 shooting, 3 of 5 from downtown. He's actually been pretty consistent from downtown, too. This last little stretch has been important for him. 6 of 7 from the free throw line, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, even gets 2 steals. He was pretty impactful on the defensive end. So another game, another Brandon Ingram masterclass, Duane. Like, how much, you kind of just expect it now, right?
Yeah, it's kind of sounding like a broken record. Brandon Ingram doesn't see a defense he does not like taking advantage of. He's able to take advantage of his matchup, especially in one-on-one situations. There's times where he caught in the post, turn right over, and shot the ball and made it all net cash. Take that with you. But BI is one of those guys that can score at 3 levels. You talk about it so many times, whether it's the 3-point shot, whether it's the mid-range, or him getting into the basket and putting pressure onto the rim. He's such a special offensive player. And for me, him just being able to bring the same energy and consistency and activity on the defensive end is why I'm super impressed and think he was super deserving of that All-Star nomination. But BI is one of the catalysts for the Raptors' success, and he showed it today. Like I said, his shorty was in the stands tonight, so he played at a high level. You always have that joke as a basketball player when you know your girl's in the stands, you dribble the ball a little bit harder, but he was competing at a high level, and I think he set the tone, especially for a team that came off the All-Star break and like you said, probably played down to the competition a little bit. He kind of showed up and showed everybody why he's so special. And I think that for him going forward, continuing to build the Raptors out in offensive situations, continuing to make the right play 9 times out of 10 times is going to bear great for this Raptor team. But man, BI is super special on the offensive end. He's gifted. And I think that teams have to start setting 2 on a more consistent basis, or he's going to continue to carve up these defenses. And the thing is, if they do send 2, he does a great job of finding the right person, the right teammate, and I think that's going to be great for the Raptors going forward.
Yeah, you love unselfish superstar. Even after this game, Brandon Ingram, the first thing he said is like, I scored that many points because I took that many shots. He even admitted he probably took maybe more shots than he anticipated and he wasn't the most efficient, but he wasn't, I wouldn't even necessarily categorize that as him being selfish. Like you said, coming off of doubles, he makes the right read 9 times out of 10. And the Raptors very much need Brandon Ingram to be aggressive with his jump shot. So you're okay with it. That's why he's able to ice this game. But then again, right before that, when he gets doubled, he finds CMB who gets the and one. So he's toggling those levers perfectly, which is exactly what you want out of your star player. And he was the head of the snake tonight. And that's going to lead the Raptors to a lot of victories again against these really bad teams. But overall, it was a good effort by a lot of guys. 6 players finished in double digits. Scotty Barnes, again, did a lot of his damage early. He finishes with 14 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, and a block. Scotty Barnes in stocks is just like, it's guaranteed nowadays. He's always going to end up with like 4 or 5 stocks. Depends player of the year, man. Get Scotty Barnes in the conversation. I want to see it come into the season. But overall, a positive night for the Raptors. And I think it's one of those wins that, like, again, you're not going to look at it as like a statement or anything, but it's what you need, building some momentum, because they have some tough matchups coming up. They're going to be facing a lot of top 10 teams, but then at the same time, I think 11 of their last 27 games are going to be against teams that are below 500 or in the bottom 10, whatever you want to call it. So tonight was a night to show you that you can take advantage of those matchups. Maybe just clean some stuff here and there and then go out with the win.
Of course, you can always get better, but for the Raptors, just trying to solidify a playoff spot, want to be consistent and stack these wins. Like you said, you can't leave nothing to chance. And in the future, when you're playing these teams that are above 500, and especially in the Western Conference that are probably tougher in competition, you want to look back and make sure you have no regret and think to yourself, wow, we should have got that one in Chicago back in February. So again, the Raptors taking care of business. I think they're doing the right thing. It was kind of a moral victory. At the end of the day, they always say there's nothing like going home and sleeping after a W. If you get that loss, it's a different conversation. You got the win. Take away the pros. There's definitely going to be some cons, but just clean it up in the film room. Darko's great at doing that, and they can continue to improve and get better. It's going to be tremendous for the second part of the season.
I think that's very well said. And it's a great spot for us to wrap it up, because that does it for us. For myself, Zulfi, Sheikh, and Duane Notice. Thank you to everyone who tuned in live, and for those listening in the morning after. Shout out to my sister-in-law and her friends who are watching the stream right now and commenting away. I appreciate the support. But if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to Locked On Raptors on all platforms. Don't forget to comment below if you have any thoughts. We'll be back on Sunday live after the Raptors visit the floundering Milwaukee Bucks before heading back home for a back-to-back. And we will see you then, breaking it all down on the Raptors Postcast. Peace.